filmed this video so many times, and the reason I keep refilming it is because as I start getting further and further into the video, I become more and more frantic, and I appear to be very stressed out, and I need to take a deep breath and collect my thoughts. And that's the reason I'm doing this video anyhow, is to collect my thoughts all into one place, as opposed to addressing a little bit of it here and a little bit of it there. I just want to get it all out in the open and catalog everything that needs to be done on the cabin. The list is growing so fast, and I think I'm losing control and losing sight of some things. So this will help to answer maybe some of the questions you have, help to give a visual representation to some of the ideas that I've mentioned to my contractor, and also to help me stay on track of some of the things that I've thought about or that I know need to be done. And that starts in this room. So I'm going to talk about the floor in here, and then we're going to head outside, come back inside, and we'll end up back in this room at the end of this video. But to start with, I needed to peel up all that peel and stick tile in this room. And wherever the water had dripped in over the years, that peel and stick tile just popped right up, no problem. But any place where the water hadn't dripped, that tile is here to stay. And I'm just winding up expending so much energy trying to get it up and just shredding the tile, and nothing's really happening to my benefit. So I'm gonna leave it, and we're just gonna cover over that with some new sheathing, some new plywood sheathing. I don't think that's gonna happen just yet though, because as Aaron mentioned in the last video, there is still some rot here in the cabin that they need to address. And one of those is right in the center of this room. There was a leak in this room originally, and the water was coming in and traveling down the rafters and hitting a header that was running across the center of the room. And then from the header, it was running down the center beam that was holding that header up and going right into the floor. And because of that, I have a soft spot in the floor. So I need to allow that to dry out before I cover it with new flooring, just to make sure that, again, I'm not trapping moisture in there. I'm not causing any further harm to the floor. So I don't think we're gonna hit that floor just yet with the plywood, but it is on the agenda to be done. Luckily, while I worked on removing these tiles, I was able to stay entertained by listening to Nance over at Buckeye Bigfoot and her narration of the stories that her viewers send into her relating to their Bigfoot experiences. If you're interested in such tales, I recommend that you check out her channel. I'll leave the link in a card up above. In the meantime, let's go out and talk about some of the things on the outside of the cabin. Let's talk about some of the things that needs to be done on the outside of the cabin still. As I've mentioned previously, I need to sand down the cabin and restain it. I will be staining it a cedar color and then putting in a buff color permachink. That permachink is absolutely necessary because last winter I did discover some holes between the logs where there's no daubing or chinking currently. There's no chinking on this cabin at all, but there's definitely no insulation in between some of these logs. And there's a draft that's coming in through those holes. So getting those sealed up will allow the cabin to retain the heat much better than it did this last year. We won't be staining the cabin until we allow these posts to dry out. Those were just installed this summer, and they'll need to dry out, and then we'll take care of that. When we installed the front door, we moved it over 8 inches. And we installed a log standing on end to fill in the gap that was left by the door frame being moved over. And to balance that out, we're gonna shave out a portion along the left-hand side of the door, and we're just gonna add in a piece of trim to match the profile and just balance out that door. And there's also some more rot out here. So as I mentioned, the rot that had taken place on the inside of the Arctic entry, at the base of the Arctic entry, dirt was allowed to accumulate around the 3 sides of it. And that dirt was basically holding in moisture from rain and snow over the course of the seasons, year after year. And that actually caused the bottom logs of the Arctic entry to sustain some rot. And we've pulled that dirt away. Hopefully that will have a chance to dry out and solidify up a little bit. Right now it doesn't appear to be too bad, but if it doesn't seem to, firm up a bit, then at some point I'll have to call someone in to remedy that for me. The roof line of the Arctic entry is actually going to be brought forward to the very front of the cabin and meet this first peak here. And creating that covered area right there will allow Kenai a place to go out during inclement weather. It'll allow me to have a dry area to stand while I'm, trying to enter the Arctic entry, should it be raining or snowing, and potentially more wood storage if need be. The fascia boards of the roof line are all going to get a black metal finish on them. I'm not painting or staining those. I'll be having soffits installed underneath the eaves and then gutters installed on the roof so that I can collect rainwater. The gutters are yet to be determined how those are going to be installed because I don't have snow breaks on the roof, and so because I do have quite a shallow pitch on the top of the roof here, there is the potential that the snow could ice up and then eventually slide off and rip off those gutters. So might do detachable, might do something that rolls up underneath in the soffits. When I first moved in, there was a small deck right off the front door, but I am actually going to have a deck run along the full length of the front of the cabin. It'll just give me another option for sitting out here. And I'll be utilizing the old rafters from the previous roof as the railings for the new deck. So that's what's happening on the front of the cabin. Now let's talk about what's happening on the back of the cabin. As you can see, I've had a door installed on the second level of the cabin, and that's going to allow me to have a balcony added to the back of the cabin so that I can enjoy the view of the mountains or the wildlife that may come through the property. But originally, I don't know what I was thinking. My contractor and I discussed only running the balcony halfway across the back of the cabin, but ultimately I need that balcony run all the way across the back. Why not take advantage of the real estate that I have available to me, and also it'll look more aesthetically pleasing. The balcony, I plan to screen it in and have some removable plexiglass panels. And I plan on sitting up here and enjoying sunrises and sunsets, but also to view the aurora borealis and the stars passing by in the night sky. And while I don't plan on turning it into an observatory necessarily, if you would like to see an observatory, I highly recommend that you check out Moose Henderson's channel, as he is actually building an observatory on his new property. He also does homesteading. I'll leave a link to his channel in the card up above. Speaking of like, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I enjoy reading your comments. So while you're at it, leave one of those too. The balcony will not have stairs running to it. That way I don't have to worry about somebody being able to easily break into the cabin. I do understand that bears can climb still and that there is the potential that a bear could get up there. However, I will be having a fence run along the majority of the back of the property. I'm not enclosing the entire property in a fence. I'll actually be starting that fence at the front corner of the cabin that I mentioned, where I'll be adding in the awning over the front of the cabin and extending the Arctic entry roof line. That will come around the outhouse, which I will be rebuilding. There's a few of us, myself and a couple of the contractor crew, that mentioned it's just, you feel like you're going to fall through when you're in there. And so it was never dug properly. It needs to be redone. And so I would like to actually have it face the mountains. And that new outhouse will be enclosed within the fence line here, but I will be enclosing a good portion of the back of the property. And the reason for that is so that Kenai has a place to run safely, free of being in danger of a predator or bear, and so that I can be out here in the garden without having to constantly be looking over my shoulders as I'm doing today. One of the other things is that fence is going to be constructed of metal poles and razor wire. Just kidding. It'll actually be constructed of telephone poles, and they'll be sunk in, 3-4 feet into the ground, and then the remaining height of that will above ground will be surrounded by some type of welded mesh wire fencing. probably cattle panels, and then some strands of electrical wire at various heights so that I can keep various animals out, including the bear. And that will be run off solar. Even though I don't have solar capabilities really in the wintertime here because the sun never gets above the tree line, I will still install it because during the summer months is when I'm needing it. I don't really necessarily need it during the winter months as much. I'm not concerned about a moose jumping over it in the wintertime as much as I am a bear coming over it in the summertime. So bears are typically asleep in the winter, not always, but typically. And, you know, it's just one of those things that do what you can, but you can't always do everything. Additionally, on the outside and the inside of the fence line, there will be hardware cloth buried so that nothing can dig underneath the fence line easily and come in that way. And while we're on the topic of bears, I need to protect the cabin in one more way from bears, and that is that I need to get some bear-proof shutters for the windows. I'm having a new window put in the kitchen, and it's a casement window that can open outward on one side. And that window was not cheap, but I'm also thinking that I'm going to need to replace these windows. But I'd rather do that on my timeline than a bear's timeline. So bear-proof shutters need to go up sooner rather than later. And this is what I have in mind. Let me know your thoughts. Good thing I got those security cameras installed. And I told you they'd learn to use the doors. Bears are so smart. Back here as well, I need to address something to do with that cellar hatch. But it's not a priority for me because now that I have the entrance from the inside, this hatch is actually rarely going to be used, only in the summer months. But the problem is that the way it opens up, if it's raining, even with the deck being there, rain will still go in. Since I had the trapdoor put on the inside of the cabin leading into the root cellar, this can wait. But eventually I might change how the outside access to the root cellar is functioning. I'd like to have a walk-in door and maybe change the direction of the stairs leading down to a landing and then back down into the root cellar itself. But that's yet to be seen because I don't want to lose the view from that window by building up a man door in front of that. So if you have any suggestions on how to address that without compromising the view, I would greatly appreciate it. I know someone had mentioned this window being higher than that window and thinking, you know, what were the builders thinking when they did that? Well, if you notice, the original builder had the window set at the same level as the one over the root cellar entrance. However, he was a very short person, and this window, believe it or not, is even shorter than I am because the top of it comes basically to my eye level. And so the new owners had this window over the other portion of the cabin lifted, and that's why it's not at the same height. I do need to install some type of gasket along the Arctic entry hatch because that's how rodents are getting in to the root cellar. There's just an air gap right there and they're coming in underneath that door. And so I need to put a seal on there so that it compresses tight and then they can't just easily get in. So that's on the agenda as well. In the back of the property, I'm also going to have an outdoor kitchen built. I would like it to be big enough to have some entertaining space in it. My initial thoughts are having it built approximately 20 by 20. The corner post will be log, and then it'll have a 3-foot pony wall going around it. I would like the availability to screen it off or encase it with plexiglass removable panels. And I would like to have a parrilla installed in the outdoor kitchen. A parrilla is a grill from Argentina where you cook slowly over hot coals on a very specialized style of grate that allows the fats to drip away and not into the coals directly. I did buy a camp stove so that I can use some propane tanks out there to do my canning in the fall, as opposed to heating up the cabin with that. And I can't really can on the wood stove that I have now. And then over my shoulder here, you can see that I have a oil tank. That oil tank, as well as the diesel tank that's on the front of the property, need to have the stands rebuilt. When those stands get rebuilt, I'm going to have the oil tank moved to the back corner of the property here, just on this side of this last window. Once that gets moved, I have a project for the other side of the cabin. I'm going to be removing all the trees from this side of the cabin because they're just too close to the cabin. Their lean is actually in the direction of the cabin. And as Erin mentioned in the last video, you know, it's wise to have a fire break around your structures. And so those trees definitely need to go for fire and wind precautions. Once I move this tank, I'm going to remove this board from the cabin because behind this board is a doorway. I believe that this was an original door to the cabin. Currently, the oil burner's on the other side of this. So I'll move the oil burner when we move the tank, and that doorway is going to lead into a new sunroom. I would like to have a lean-to sunroom put on this side of the cabin. This is the south side of the cabin. And then also on this side of the property, I'll be having a pole barn, a metal building, if you will, built. That building needs to be large enough to accommodate any vehicles that I might have, including a tractor, a side-by-side, and potentially a snow machine, as well as any gardening tools or anything that you would normally house in a garage will go into that pole barn. That will take up this south side. So basically we've covered all the sides because, as I've mentioned in a previous video, I would like to see that woodshed stay if we could. If we need to sturdy up the back wall of it, you know, I'm all about it, let's do it. But that woodshed, I think, is a godsend. Let's talk about the outbuildings on the property. And we're going to start with the bunkhouse. So the bunkhouse needs a new roof. Not because there's anything wrong with the current roof, but I would like to put a metal roof on it so that I know that it's going to last and so that it matches the cabin. And then the siding needs to be redone on it. The siding currently is disintegrating because it's just that spray closed-cell foam that the old roof of the cabin had on it. And being left out in the elements, it is deteriorating. Getting a little crowded in my sky. Helicopters. Yikes. I'm needing to get rid of that spray foam on there. It's just an eyesore. It's not environmentally safe. It just keeps, you know, flaking away. And I would like to have it removed and have some traditional siding put on this structure. And I'm leaning towards having this clad in red metal or board and batten. I think it'll look nice with the slate colored roof. So just a thought. And then I need to clear all the debris from around the bunkhouse. On this side is all the items that were stored inside by the previous owners that they left behind. Nothing of it is of any real value. It's all just the nuts and bolts that one would collect over the years from tearing apart projects. And on this side is just junk. Old plywood that's basically disintegrating along with the siding. Some old metal road signs that might be useful for a backer board. But for the most part, nothing out here has any real value. I also need to remove these trees right here because they are basically touching the bunkhouse. I mean, it does provide a nice break in the view from the cabin to here, but it's not really safe to have them there, so they really should go. Did I mention that I would like an outhouse built over here at the bunkhouse as well? Yep. I would like it if my guest, whether it's my contractor and his crew, or I have family or friends come out and they are staying in the bunkhouse, I'd like for them to have their own private bathroom where they don't have to worry about walking in on somebody else or running across the property just to use the facilities. So a bunkhouse is in order. An outhouse is in order for the bunkhouse. After I deal with this building, I still have two other outbuildings I need to deal with, and that would be the greenhouse and the other odd-shaped building that's also covered in that same spray foam. Now, The greenhouse, I'll try to salvage what I can from it, but for the most part, I don't think anything's salvageable. And once it comes down and I start putting my garden in, I think that I'm either going to put in a high tunnel or I'm going to put in a geodesic dome. I haven't really decided, though I think I know which way I'm leaning. Wink, wink, know me. If you don't know who I'm talking about, be sure to check out the end of my videos. At the end of my videos, I link some other channels that you might want to check out for entertainment. And Gnomestead actually does geodesic dome installs. He actually has a business doing that. So I might be calling on you to come out here and help install that geodesic dome. Might. I haven't made up my mind just yet. We'll talk. And I need to have the yard leveled out behind the cabin. All the dirt that came out from underneath the cabin when they put in the root cellar is just piled up on one side, and it's an eyesore. I can't really traverse my way up it very easily, or down for that matter, but the moose sure can. And I just need to have the property leveled out. Oh, and I know somebody who can do that too. So Bill, over at Alaska's Last Frontier Homestead, I might be calling on you. Though both of these gentlemen live, a couple hundred miles away, so we'll see. However, I need to have the back of the property leveled out, and I need to install a well. One of the original owners did attempt to put a well in. I don't think he had it done professionally though, and he never did hit water. So I'd like to call out a well digging company, have them locate the best area to put a well in and tap and get that drilled in so that I can make sure that I have water available to me at all times, especially during the warmer months. If I have to melt snow in the wintertime, to get by, that's fine. I can do that. But I would like to make sure that if I have that availability to have a well, that I get a well drilled. And I think that covers all the outbuildings plus the land. So now that we've talked about the four sides of the cabin, let's head inside and talk about some of the things that need to be done in there. Besides that, I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes.